Welcome back to the Grow with Cara show. Today, we continue our interview series with successful attorney marketers. We're taking a close look at what's working, what's not working so well, the specific steps these attorneys took to get to where they are. And remember, these are simple steps that you too can follow to get on a similar path to growth. Okay, let's get right to it. Today, our special guest is attorney Matt Dubin. Matt is the founder and senior attorney at the Dubin Law Group, a personal injury firm serving the greater Seattle area. Matt's also the author of the book, Maximizing Your Injury Claims, Simple Steps to Protect Your Family After an Accident. Welcome, Matt. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Cara. I'm glad to do it.
Thanks. So Matt, to begin, tell us a little bit about your background, a little bit about your story so our audience can get to know you a little bit more. You launched the Dubin Law Group in 1998, right?
I did. And I mean, the story itself could take hours. So I'll try and give you the really compressed version. I got out of law school and was working for a personal injury attorney. And he lost a big medical malpractice case. And, he had taken a mortgage on an investment property he owned, and he was all in on this case, walked away from a $3.5 million offer and got a defense verdict at trial. And shortly after that, he suggested that I start working on my resume because he wasn't sure he could keep paying me. And I really didn't want to go looking for a job. I liked what I was doing. And so I actually made the suggestion that instead of him paying me a salary, let me stay right where I am, use his office, his phone system, his computers, his receptionist, and I would pay him rent and let me work off half the rent doing contract work for him. And that maybe he could toss me 10 or 12 decent personal injury cases to get me started. And that's what we did. And so that was originally we're the law office of Matthew Dubin. And technically, I mean, legally, it's still our name, right? But now we're the Dubin Law Group. And that's how we started. And I grossed $12,000 in year one and $18,000 in year two, and was almost ready to throw in the towel. And, we were able to close some decent cases in year three. And it's just, and I mean, year three was, like I think 2001, right? We started in 98. So it's been a long time.
Yep.
And it's just kind of snowballed to where we are right now, which approaching 50 people total. We just hired our 9th and 10th attorneys.
Nice.
They actually haven't even started yet. And we've got 4 offices in the kind of greater Seattle area. And we're likely to open a 5th office in Southwest Washington later this year. So it's been a long journey. I did the first 9 years without any help. It was just me, literally like answering the phones, doing the books, going to court, everything. And it was my in-laws who suggested to me that I wasn't going to be able to grow anymore. I was doing the best I could, right? But I mean, I was managing my caseload with Excel spreadsheets, and I didn't have any case management software. And they are the ones who suggested you need help if you want to grow. And they were so right. I mean, just hiring my first assistant in 2007, we tripled revenue within 6 months. Right?
Wow.
So clearly, I needed to be focusing on what I was good at, and I needed help with the other stuff. And that's a lesson I've kind of continued to apply over the years as we've scaled up. I've had to reinvent myself and reinvent the firm a number of times as we've grown into a much larger organization.
Yeah, and that can be a really difficult step, a scary step for solo practitioners, right? When is the right time to hire? When am I becoming the bottleneck? So that if we're going to scale this, we really need to, how do we delegate? I think that's a really important lesson. Matt, tell us a little bit about kind of that turning point when you turned the corner, when you realized, okay, I can do this, I can really grow this firm. What changed? I mean, you obviously had more help internally, but how were most of your clients finding you kind of in those early days of growth?
So I've always been kind of interested in marketing and didn't have a lot of extra money, right? So when you have a lot of money, you get the luxury of kind of a brand recognition campaign, right? But when you're scrapping, you need to get a return on every dollar, like an immediate return. So it's all direct response. So obviously I looked for free marketing as much as I could. And to me, taking a chiropractor or another like treatment provider or a guy from a body shop or something like that, taking them out to lunch, that's essentially free marketing.
Yeah.
So, networking was really, really big. And I would set aside time each week. In fact, I would go into the year and my commitment was I'm going to have 52 separate meetings with 52 possible referral sources. So roughly once a week, I would meet with a new referral source. And I mean, if 10% of them turn into a referral source and each of them just refers one case a month, now you've got a pretty good flow of new cases coming in. And all you have to do is, have lunch with interesting people and have great conversations and, maybe spend 20 or 30 bucks. So I did a lot of offline networking.
That's good.
I was told very early on with SEO, content is king. I still think that's true. So I spent a lot of time writing interesting content. I started blogging and I would just blog about whatever was interesting to me. The questions clients most commonly asked, I would do them as FAQs. I'd break down each one. I would do videos and they were really low quality video, self-produced in-house. It didn't matter. We were early to the game with video and we got it on our website. We got it on our YouTube channel. So I think the content helped. And so for a long time, for years, I was really, really focused on I would pick one guy who was ranked above me in the high volume organic searches, like for car accident lawyer, Seattle. Yeah. And I would run the search myself and I'd be like, why is this guy number 3 and I'm number 9? And how do I close the gap between him and me? So I would just be relentless with keywords and backlinks and content. And, I would use the online tools to find out who are the highest value domains that are referring to his site and make sure I was getting links on those sites also. So and all this stuff is essentially free. I mean, if you have the time to write, and most lawyers, we know what we're talking about. We talk about this stuff all day, right? You could sit down and write 5 really valuable content blog posts in a half hour. And then you just post one a day for a week. Do it on the weekend, right? And you have one every day for the week. And so Google's going to reward fresh, new, relevant content. And so, I did a lot of that, a lot of organic SEO, a lot of offline networking. I would start to, as I could, get involved in community events. If there was a street fair or an event, even if we weren't officially sponsors, I would be there. I'd have the Dubin Law shirt. I'd be handing out, merchandise, cheap merchandise, chip clips or pencils or, bubbles for the kids with our logo on it. And whatever would get our name in people's heads, I would just do whatever it took to get people to think of my name when they were thinking of personal injury.
That's really smart. I think you identified several really strong, avenues, and like you say, really low cost, free options for, folks who might not have that budget. So let's kind of unpack that a little bit briefly. You talked about the offline networking. That can obviously be a huge source of referrals. So what's your advice for kind of increasing referral business? How did you really go about recruiting those referral sources? So specifically in what did you say when meeting a new referral source? Let's get into the specifics a little bit.
Yeah. And it's good because they don't teach this in law school. They don't teach us how to run a business. They certainly don't teach us sales. And for some of us, it feels a little dirty, right? Well, I'm not a salesman. I'm an attorney. I'm this highly skilled professional. But the reality is it's a competitive business. We've got to sell ourselves. We've got to sell our services. Right. So what I do when I meet a referral source is I spend a lot of time listening to them. I show genuine interest in what they do. People love talking about themselves and what they do and telling their story, kind of like what I'm doing to you right now. And so, your audience probably doesn't want, they already know your story, right? So, if you were a referral source, though, I would be asking you the questions, and I would want to know, how'd you get where you are? What's your philosophy? How do you treat your patients or your clients? And like, what are your priorities? And what are challenges that you've had working with other attorneys in the past? So, the same thing we do when a potential client calls us, right? We don't want to just talk to them about, we're so great and we'll get you lots of money. What we want to know first is, what are you afraid of? Like, what are your concerns and what are your goals? What do you want to get out of this process? So I ask the same kinds of questions from referral sources. Like, what's your biggest frustration dealing with personal injury lawyers? What's your biggest frustration dealing with insurance companies and dealing with injury claims? And what would make it better? And then when I've heard all of that, then I know kind of what they need to hear. And it's not pandering, right? Because I don't lie, I don't tell the truth. I'm going to tell them, look, we expect you to bill their health insurance if you're contracted with their health insurance, right? A lot of doctors, they'd rather just carry the lien and get paid 100%. In Washington, we have PIP. PIP is primary. If there's no PIP, we want them billing the health insurance. And so, like, I'm going to tell them what our expectations are of them and be very honest. But at the same time, I could say, look, we're going to make sure if the insurance company owes you money that they're paying your bills. We're going to work with you to make your life easier. So you want to handle more personal injury cases. And, that's the biggest thing for most providers, especially chiropractors, is we're going to help you get paid more of what you're owed with less hassle for yourself.
Yeah.
That's most of their concerns, but they also want to know, look, we haven't talked about core values, but it's really, really important. I read a book years ago by Gino Wickman called Traction. And the subtitle is Get a Grip on Your Business. And a lot of it is about knowing your numbers and setting goals and having meetings and just a lot of really proactive management techniques to get your whole organization on board and moving. But very central to the whole kind of thesis of the book is you need to know who you are first. As a business owner and as an organization, you need to have an identity. You need to have core values and a mission statement. And so I was very thoughtful about developing my organization's core values. And it's a reflection of my personal core values. And it's I don't think it's very typical for a personal injury firm. Our core values are gratitude, empathy, and compassion. So it doesn't mean that, we don't fight hard or, that we're not great advocates and all the other things that people expect from their personal injury lawyers, right? But it means we lead with those values, with gratitude for every phone call, with empathy for not just our clients, but our coworkers and even opposing attorneys and claims adjusters on the other line, and compassion for what everybody's going through, particularly our clients, but just for other human beings and the human condition. And I think when we approach new relationships that way, we genuinely love people and we care about what we do. And people get that, right? I mean, it comes out in how we communicate. So we want our chiropractors, for example, or other referral sources, we want them to love working with us. And we want to make sure they care about their patients the same way we care about our clients. And if they don't, maybe it's not a good fit.
Yeah.
And we find when we meet on that level, when we have that dialogue, it can build really solid, lasting connections and really strong, enduring referral relationships. Even if sometimes it doesn't work out, we can't take a case, or we have to ask them to reduce their fee, they know we're coming from a place of authentic compassion for our clients and a real deep passion for what we do.
Yeah. I read that, the firm kind of describes your approach as, that mama bear approach, which I think is such a good analogy, right? You're nurturing and protective, but, strong when needed. I think that's a really interesting analogy. So you talk about, maintaining these ongoing referral relationships, right? How do you kind of stay in touch with multiple referral sources? How do you kind of continue to cultivate those relationships? It's kind of like a friendship, right? Or dating and then, marriage, right? How are you, creating a more consistent flow of referrals from your network?
So it's been a challenge as we've scaled up. And, my role in the firm really has transitioned more to like CEO than practicing attorney. And so it has been a challenge. Right? I mean, some of my earliest referral relationships now are some of my best friends, and I socialize with them and we have a relationship. And every now and then I'll hear from them, hey, we're still taking referrals because, one of the things that I've done is I reward my attorneys for originating cases on their own. So if they were to bring in a case and refer it to a lawyer across town or across the country, they'd probably get a third of the fee, right? And we don't have referral fees in Washington. You have to be co-counsel. You have to have shared responsibility. So, we're able to work that out with co-counsel arrangements and, with checking in, keeping tabs on the case, making sure we're actually kind of fulfilling our ethical responsibilities and having shared responsibility for the case. But at the end of the day, if you originate the case, likely you're going to get a third, depending on the type of case, from any lawyer anywhere in the country, right? So I do the same in-house with my attorneys, and they originate a case, they get a third of the fee. Even if they don't work the case, if they bring it in and somebody else works it, they're going to get a third of the case. So I really encourage all of my attorneys to kind of develop and maintain these independent referral relationships on their own. It strengthens the firm, it strengthens our brand and our reputation, and it helps, our attorneys, on a professional level. It helps them on a financial level. I tell every attorney I hire in my firm, I want us all to get rich together. And so I think figuring out how to incentivize attorneys and also non-attorney staff so that people respond to incentives, right? And so It's good to have a great work environment. It's good for people to know you care about them. But at the end of the day, they want to know they're going to be able to make money.
Yeah.
And so they each kind of have their own pool of referral sources, separate from the network that I've built and also the stuff that comes from our traditional advertising we're doing now. And so I still do have a challenge, right? How about my really long-standing referral sources that nobody gets a piece of that because they're my referral sources? So what I do periodically is I'll incentivize my non-lawyer staff, like our case managers or legal assistants, and I'll say, like, for the next month, every referral to this doctor who begins treatment, who initiates treatment in the month of May, the case manager that makes the referral gets a $100 bonus.
Nice.
And so just kind of, and then I let the referral source know, hey, we're doing this. We're incentivizing our team to send people to you. So they appreciate it. We get a flurry of cases. We just kind of have to do it on a rotation to keep everybody in the mix. It is harder as you scale up as an organization, really maintaining those one-on-one relationships that are based on a personal connection. It's just harder as you scale up. There's only one of me,
right?
And I can't be having lunch with a different referral source every day.
Right. So you talked about being involved in the community. I can tell it's very obvious that the firm is involved in the community, supports the community. I noticed on your Instagram that your team, was recently part of the Brain Injury Alliance of Washington Walk and Run. Why is supporting the community important to the firm, and how does that sort of, segue into your growth as well?
I really want, I read a lot of management books, right? And one of the things, I don't know if it's new, but it's something I've seen a lot more of recently, is that maybe it's millennials or Gen Zs, right? Is like they're looking for more than just a job, right? They want to make a difference. And I feel like the work we do does make a difference, right? One person at a time, one family at a time. We're getting justice. We're turning people's lives around. And that's great. I've always been so proud of what we do and the service that we provide to people who need us. But I think creating an opportunity for our people, and as we've scaled up, and like I said, we're approaching 50 people across 4 offices, And it's important to me personally, and I found that my staff really feels the same, that if we can tangibly be making a difference, not just in our clients' lives, but in the community and making it a better place, I think, for purely selfish reasons, they're going to stay longer because they're going to feel like it's about more than just checking off their tasks and earning a paycheck.
Right.
And the other thing is, it's just something I'm driven to do. And I think if I can share that, we can kind of multiply our efforts and make a bigger impact. So Brain Injury Alliance of Washington was one of the first nonprofits that we got involved with because, we see a lot of brain injuries in our practice, and they're often undiagnosed and untreated, and they're misunderstood even by the people closest to the person who's got the injury. Like, you can't see it on an x-ray, and especially even if you do get a diagnosis, it's like, you look fine. Why can't you do the things you used to do? And the spouse would get mad at them, and we've seen marriages break up because, an injured person has a brain injury and the other spouse just can't deal with it. And so Brain Injury Alliance of Washington, really does a lot of education and advocacy, so to help people understand like what brain injury is. And, they focus on how to avoid brain injury, but also kind of treatment and counseling for injured people and their support network, their family and friends. And they also are involved in advocacy for, different laws, different treatment options for brain injured people. So it was a natural fit for us. I've always kind of wanted to do a bicycle helmet drive for kids, and that's something they already do with different sponsors. So we haven't done that, but it's a cause I really cared about, and my team just really kind of got involved. And since then, we've gotten involved with Mary's Place, which does shelters for homeless women with children. And homelessness is a huge problem here in Seattle, as I know it is in Southern California and really lots of places all over the country. So, anytime kids are involved, whether it's an injured kid, which is, that's when our, talk about a mama bear, right? I mean, that's when our deep sense of injustice comes out, and we want to fight to get justice. But if we can do something to kind of lessen the suffering, I'm a big fan of the arts. And so, we donate to Creative Dance Center, and their founder invented something called the Brain Dance, which basically kind of incorporates different movements with different kinds of brain function. And recently we've been able to partner up the Creative Dance Center with the Brain Injury Alliance. Wow. And, we're planning to sponsor a class. They can't call it therapeutic because they need licenses and things, but, it's dance for people with brain injuries. And the idea that certain movements will activate certain pathways in the brain, and wow. It just gets me really excited.
Very cool. Mm-hmm.
Last year was our first turkey giveaway for Thanksgiving. We gave away, I think, 100 frozen turkeys. Nice. Just in the parking lot in front of our building. And it was so popular. It was so big that this year we plan to scale it up. I don't know how many, maybe 200, maybe 500, but really the radio stations are all happy to do PSAs. Right. And, we're going to announce to all the shelters and the food banks and everything, and maybe even get some co-sponsors to donate some sides, and really just, make a good Thanksgiving dinner possible for hundreds of families that couldn't afford it. It just feels good, and that's why we do it, because it feels good. It's the right thing to do.
Very cool. Very cool. And on a similar vein, you give a lot of presentations on insurance coverage, on kind of the rights of the injured. Why is it so important to you to educate the public about kind of the personal injury process and their rights? And how has that kind of education first approach impacted the firm?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, you're talking about marketing, right? So you want to get your name out there. You want to be relevant. I've heard other of your guests talk about, you want to be seen as an expert. And we are, even though we're not allowed to advertise ourselves as experts, we know a lot of stuff that most people don't know. And sometimes we forget that they don't know it, right? We live in this world where so we know every possible type of insurance coverage you can get on your car. But even people who come to work for me don't really understand auto insurance until we educate them. And I'll tell you, one of the most frustrating and heartbreaking things to me is when somebody calls us and they've got catastrophic injuries, and the person who hit them was either uninsured or they've got minimal limits. And there's, in almost every case, there's nothing we can do for them. It's heartbreaking when somebody has life-altering injuries and we can't help. And I wish there was a way, and they don't teach it in school. Nobody's telling you, like, you need uninsured motorist coverage. Like, you need personal injury protection. This is what it is. This is what it'll do. It's like, well, no, I have health insurance. Well, health insurance is fine, but there's copays, deductibles. You have to stay in your network. There's limits on what it will cover. It's like, and especially motorcycles, like people riding motorcycles without UIM and without PIP coverage. It blows my mind, but nobody told them you need this. And so that's been kind of a mission of mine. And the thing is, they also don't tell you that to increase your coverage, right? So like in Washington, you can have personal injury protection for $10,000 or $35,000. And the increased premium from $10,000 to $35,000, it's like 10 or 15 bucks a month to get that extra $25,000 of medical coverage if you need it. But your agent isn't telling you, nobody's selling it. And so it's a huge frustration of mine that people don't know you have to ask for the coverage in order to get it. That people every day call our office and we ask them about their insurance and they say they have full coverage. And full coverage, that's a pet peeve of mine too, right? Because car insurance is a la carte. There is no such thing as full coverage. It's like you have to have, liability and collision and comprehensive. And then you need the coverages that protect you, like the PIP or MedPay, and the uninsured or underinsured. And do you have rental car coverage? What are you going to do if your car's wrecked? And it makes me so angry that nobody tells people. And then you try and tell people about it. And a lot of times they're like, I don't want to hear about that because I don't want to jinx myself. If we talk about car accidents, then I'm going to get in a car accident. So I just don't want to hear about it. And trying to break through that and help people understand, like, nobody is looking out for you, but you. And if you could just have this information, hopefully you'll never need it. But if you do, and you call me, I'll be in the best position to help you and get you what you deserve. And if you don't, we have mandatory insurance. I think every state in the country has mandatory liability insurance. Over 20% of the drivers in Washington are uninsured. And I think another 40% have the minimum $25,000 coverage, right? So that's like 60% of the drivers on the road have $25,000 or less. And if you're in a bad wreck and you're taken by ambulance to the ER and they have to do some diagnostic testing, you've used up that coverage already. And so then what are you going to do? So I'm very passionate about just getting the word out. Like, you need to be an advocate for yourself. And you need to take steps now proactively to make sure you and your family are protected, in the event that something unexpected happens, because it does. It happens all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And, educating prospective clients, providing that value. I mean, that's how you convey your caring. That's how you distinguish yourself from the attorney down the street, right? If, perhaps a prospective client comes to your website and they're not quite ready to book that consult or quite ready to pick up the phone and give you a call. They're looking to gather more information, looking to get some of their questions answered. Likely they're experiencing a legal situation that's very scary, something they know very little about. If you can be the attorney to provide some answers and just provide some support, you will absolutely, position yourself as the appropriate attorney to handle their unique case, right?
So we have to be careful, right? Because we can't really give legal advice to people who aren't our clients, but we can say in general terms what the law is, right? And in general terms, what different insurance coverages are and what they do. And so we're happy to put all that stuff out there because, look, I consider myself pretty intelligent. I can read and I can learn things pretty quickly, but if I need to sell my house, I know just enough to know that I need help.
Right.
I need a realtor who's made a career out of it. and when I'm preparing my taxes, I could probably figure it out. But I know enough to know I will do better if I hire a CPA to do my taxes. And I think, like, I'm not afraid of giving away so much information that somebody's going to go represent themselves. And
Right.
if they
That's a
choose
good
to do
point.
it, more power to them. And I
Yeah.
wish them the best, but more likely than not, they're going to get down that road. And at some point, they're going to call me up and say, like, I need some help in this. And so I really feel like when it comes to something like personal injury law, the more you know as a non-attorney, the more you understand that the system is geared against you and you really do need help to get the best outcome. And even if you are really smart and can figure it out and can be an advocate for yourself, it's so much work and there's so much anxiety. Like, did I miss something? Did I say the wrong thing? Did I sign the wrong paperwork? And you never know 100% for sure. And for us, it's like our whole organization is built around making sure you do the right thing, that you don't do more than the law requires you to do, that your rights are protected, and that we're going to get you 100% of what the law says you're entitled to. And we're not scamming anybody. This isn't like going to Vegas and throwing the dice, right? It's not a gamble. It's about following the law and getting you the compensation that the law says you are entitled to, because the whole insurance industry is built around the premise, like, we're going to pay out less than people deserve so we can make more profit to our shareholders. And it's not good or bad. It's just they're corporations. Like, their goal is to maximize profit for their shareholders. But if there's not somebody like me and my firm and others like us holding the insurance companies accountable for ordinary people to protect their rights and get them what they deserve, then it's just not going to happen.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. So Matt, let's jump briefly back to kind of what you're doing now. So about what % of the firm's revenue at this point are you spending on marketing and advertising, and how are you spending those dollars?
We've gone through a huge transformation over the last 5 years or so. And I'll just say, look, all of that free marketing that we talked about, all that guerrilla marketing, getting in the community, networking with people, like, we've never stopped doing that. And it's fun. I mean, if you don't like people and you're in this business, you're probably in the wrong business, right? I love people. I love meeting new people and learning about them and talking about what they do. But I think around 2017, 2018, we had a few really big settlements and a big jury verdict. And to my wife's chagrin, we took all that money and reinvested it into the firm. And we started doing more traditional media. So we started doing some TV and some radio. There's not a whole lot of billboards in Seattle, but we're doing bus boards. We started hitting the digital a lot harder, doing both, Google AdWords and doing, display ads, digital display, programmatic stuff. So right now we do the full mix of traditional media and kind of what I call the guerrilla media, I guess, guerrilla tactics. We do everything.
Right.
We want everybody to think of our name when personal injury comes up. Last year, our actual, like, advertising spend as a percentage of revenues was probably around 23%.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're still aggressively growing.
Yeah.
I mean, our revenues have grown between 75 and 100%, probably 5 years running. And we may be 8 figures this year.
Wow.
For the first time. And of course, revenues don't mean anything if you're spending all that money to grow and to build and to market and on payroll and everything else. It's just, you need to scale smart, and that's a whole nother podcast, right? But there's huge challenges with management and scaling. I would love for my kind of marketing as a percent of gross to gradually trend down. I think as long as we're still in growth mode, around 20% is something I'd be really comfortable with. And then when we get to a point where I think we maybe want to moderate the growth and not hold steady, but just moderate the growth rate a little bit, maybe I could see it coming down as low as 15%, but right now we're in the low 20s and I'm reasonably comfortable with that.
Yeah. So what's primarily fueling that growth? Is it this nice mix that you have set up? Is there a particular channel that has a higher ROI for you?
So if you're just looking at ROI, so this gets back to management and marketing are so intertwined, right? And if you're spending a lot of money on marketing and you don't know your numbers intimately, then you're throwing money away, right? So it has to go hand in hand. When you start spending real money on marketing, you need to know, and I'm a big fan of tracking. It becomes a lot harder to track, to attribute a lead, right? When the person who call you, they saw you on a bus, they've seen your TV ad 17 times, they heard you on the radio, and then they Google car accident lawyer and you're up on AdWords and you're in the local service ads, and then you're organically #1. Well, like, how do you attribute that lead? You really can't at that
Right.
point. But you kind of need to know where the leads are coming from, at least to the extent you can. You need to know cost per lead, and then you need to know your want rate per marketing source. So you know, like, what's your cost per viable lead? And then you need to really, really dial in your intake procedures so that you're converting those wanted leads at a very high rate. In the last couple of years, our conversion rate of those wanted leads has gone up from like the low 70s up to like the low 90s. So we're converting 92, 93% of those wanted leads into cases. So then I know, if I know my total marketing spend and I know the total number of leads and I know our want rate, I know our conversion rate, I can give you our cost per case, right? I know exactly cost per retained case. Last year and this year, how are we trending? How are we doing better? So you asked like the best ROI. For us right now, Google AdWords and Google local service ads, other than the offline stuff, the networking and the referrals and things like that, as far as paid leads,
Right.
it's the cheapest cases that we're getting.
Yeah.
And they seem to be pretty good quality cases. So look, TV leads just cost more. I think that's always been the case. I think it's just the nature of the game.
Right.
TV and radio converts, but it's more expensive. So you also need to know, your average fee per case, your average time on desk, right? Because if you're projecting your spending for this year and you're generating leads right now, and the average time on desk is 14 months, you're not going to start seeing revenue from those for 14 months. Like, you need to make sure you got enough cash that you can sustain that advertising for the next 12, 14, 18, 24 months before the revenues come in. And here's the other thing. A friend of mine from St. Louis told me this. When you spend $1 million more on advertising, be prepared to spend $1 million more on payroll before the fees come in.
Yeah.
Because you've got that increased volume of leads. So you need an intake team, right? You need to handle the leads. And now you need attorneys and support staff to work up those cases before the fees come in.
Right.
So growth is terrifying.
Yeah.
And you've got to plan it right, you've got to time it right. So I do believe that the broad mix of like being known in the community, showing up at community events. For us in Seattle, Pride Fest it may be the biggest Pride event in the whole country. It's the largest free festival in Seattle. We've got like 100,000 people that show up over a weekend, and it's just this big festive atmosphere. So we've been the only law firm that sponsors Seattle Pride for like 5 years.
Nice.
And we set up a big 10 by 10 tent. We give away lots of like rainbow branded swag. We've got a photo booth, and we're just out there having fun with the community. And so, like, if somebody's in an accident 6 months from now and they Google, because that's what they're going to do, right? They're going to Google car accident lawyer or injury lawyer near me or whatever. And they're going to see my name and they're going to be like, I remember those guys. They may not even remember where they remember us from, but it just all works. It just all works together.
Yeah.
And it's a luxury to be able to do all of that, because I think back to my early days, and I would see lawyers doing this, expensive brand awareness marketing. And I'd be kind of jealous, right? Because I didn't have, going back to what we talked about before, when you're on a tight budget, you don't have that luxury. Every dollar you spend on advertising needs to have an immediate return. It needs to have a paying client so you can pay the bills and get the next one. And so, I mean, I guess if there's a takeaway from that is if you really believe in what you're doing and you want to scale up, then, I mean, I'm kind of an advocate of debt. I think if you need to get, and don't use your personal credit cards, don't liquidate your, don't liquidate your IRA or your 401k. I mean, get an SBA loan. And I mean, rates are going up now, but the terms are reasonable. And like, if you're smart and you've got a business plan and you've got it put together, I know lots of lawyers who are very successful without ever taking on debt, but I'm telling you, if you need to take on debt to hire your first assistant and get your name out there in the community, if you have a plan for repaying it, I think it can, otherwise you could be spinning your wheels for years like I was before you get that big break. And then, hopefully you know what to do with it when it comes in.
Right, right. So Matt, you've provided a ton of practical, really used today ideas. But before we wrap up, I always like to ask, if a lawyer is watching and maybe only has time to adopt one, maybe two of your firm's successful marketing channels, what would you recommend to them?
I always tell people it's going to be more than one thing, but I mean, I always tell people pick a paid thing, a free thing, and a long-term thing. So, okay, so a paid thing, I mean, it can be, I don't know, take out an ad in your local magazine or newspaper, or, I don't even know, like maybe try a small budget with AdWords or something. I think like spending some money on getting the word out, if you do it smart, it can help. Pick one paid thing. A free thing, for me, the easiest thing is just write content.
Yeah.
Right. I don't care if you have a content writer that you're paying already. Like nobody can write content like you can as the young lawyer. You know yourself, you know your values, you know the firm, you know what your clients are asking you. Just take some time and write some valuable content. Google rewards relevant, valuable content. Write it and get it on your website. They want to see frequent changes in your website too. So it doesn't cost you anything except your time, and it's already in your head anyway. So just do it. And then a long-term thing, like write a book. That was a long-term project for me. And I mean, look, you can go out and license somebody, hell, maybe James Publishing even does it, I don't know, right? Where you can pay to put your name on a book and say, 20 ways to ruin your personal injury claim in Paducah. And, you put your name on it, and that's great. I mean, it's better than not having anything at all. I wanted my book to be my thoughts and my words, but I was really busy, being a lawyer and running a firm. And it took me over 3 years. And then ultimately I had to hire a writing and publishing coach to, again, going back to like, if you need to do something, hire a professional, right? And he helped me kind of structure my thoughts in a way that would actually be an enjoyable read. And eventually we got something I was really proud of. And, again, going back to marketing, I would take, boxes of my books and bring them to like every chiropractor's office in town and say, look, I would love your referrals, but even if you're working with somebody else, even if you're not comfortable making the referral, if you have personal injury patients, would you give them a copy of my book? Nice. Because there's some information there I think they really need to have. And honestly, I would rather them know that they need help and hire somebody else than not hire anybody at all. And I've always been that way with new potential clients, with leads. We're super low pressure. We give them all the information. We're very confident in the value that we provide. But people shop around for 6 months for their next TV, but they hire the first lawyer that they talk to. And this is more important, right? So I never hesitate to say, if they have any concerns at all, go talk to 3 or 4 lawyers and see who you're comfortable with and see who's focused on what your concerns are and not just talking about themselves. And then make the decision that's going to be right for you and your family. And I mean, 90% of the time or more, they're going to go talk to somebody else and then come back and say, yeah, we like you the best and we want to hire you.
Right. Exactly. Very cool, Matt. I love your approach. Your passion really comes through when you talk about this stuff. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. It was a true pleasure learning from you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Cara. It was fun.
Great. So everyone, be sure to join us for our next episode of the Grow with Cara show happening very soon. Have a great day. Thanks. Bye-bye.